Hi everyone, welcome to today's Variety Hour, April Variety Hour, and we're delighted to have you here with us. We have 4 awesome speakers. We're really excited to hear about these projects and this the work that's been happening with all these groups. Firstly, we're going to have Jorge talk about BiodAIverse. Did I say it right? We'll find out, which is a new spin out and doing some really interesting work. Leila's going to talk about some research her team at GSMA has been doing and just published into some of the incentives and barriers to implementing digital solutions in natural resource management. Ruth Oliver is going to talk about 2 of the research projects she's leading, looking at using tags and traps to provide new ways of looking at our impact on wildlife. And Henrik Cox from Sentinel AI at the Conservation X Labs team is going to talk about the Sentinel project and how it's how they're trying to make wildlife monitoring as easy as possible. So great lineup. Can't wait to hear more. In the middle, we'll have our quiz, and at the end, if we have time, should have time, we'll have a little space if you've got anything to share or offer or news to announce. We'll have some time for that. But that is enough from me. We're going to get into it. Jorge, I think you're our first speaker, so do you want to take over?
Okay, thank you. Let me share my screen. So nice. Hopefully you can see my screen now.
Yep, looks good.
Okay, perfect. Good afternoon, everyone. Well, first of all, thank you, Stephanie, for the opportunity to present our initiative in this Variety Hour. Let me start by telling you who we are and what we do. BiodAIverse is a spin-off company that arises from many years of academic research on smart conservation technologies. Let me see. Okay. So this is the founding team of BiodAIverse. You can see that we cover disciplines from telecommunication engineering and electronics to biology and economics with a remarkable degree of specialization. This is indeed a differential feature of our spin-off. The public research institutions underlying and supporting BiodAIverse are the Institute of Microelectronics of Seville and Doña Ana Biological Station, which belong to the Spanish National Research Council and the University of Seville. Well, these research institutions seem pretty different, and actually they are, but by pure serendipity, we ended up sharing premises. And well, BiodAIverse is the fortunate result of putting people with such different backgrounds together. And what do? Well, we work at the intersection of the latest advances on artificial intelligence, hardware, and software to enable reliable wildlife observation. Through advanced engineering, we provide an end-to-end technological infrastructure for effective wildlife monitoring and reporting. And well, in the next few slides, I'm going to describe some of the products and services that make up this infrastructure. Okay, the first product that can be considered the core of our technology is an IoT platform that can be operated on the cloud or in local premises if required for whatever reason. This platform permits to collect data coming from different systems deployed in the field and then aggregate them for proper visualization and analysis through ad hoc panels according to prescribed customer requirements. Real-time alarms to mobile phones or any other device can also be programmed in this platform. Actually, in this slide, you can see on the right a Telegram bot that we have implemented to inform about the location of bat individuals bearing a transponder when they are entering or exiting a smart shelter. We will talk more about this in a few slides. Having this information in real time is useful, for instance, in case you want to capture a particular individual to carry out any action on it. Well, in this sequence, you can see how information of different nature can be integrated in our platform. For instance, like geolocations of systems deployed in the field, time-stamped readings from RFID animal transponder, etc. You can also perform other tasks like interacting in real time with CCTV footage to select a region of interest for further processing. And we will talk more about this in a moment, okay? In this slide, you have another example of the versatility of our IoT platform to present information according to customer requirements. In this case, we show a mosaic of video streams coming from cameras monitoring different nest boxes. Again, we will talk more about this at the end of the presentation. Additional information such as temperature and transponder readings is also integrated per box. Okay, once you have the information in our platform, you can process it as needed. Okay, one of our major field of expertise is artificial vision, and here you can see the operation of a vision algorithm on CCTV footage related to what I previously explained. Let me execute it again. Okay. And in this algorithm is automatically executed according to a prescribed time schedule every day, and a report is automatically generated with the timestamps of the corresponding identifications. This report allows researchers to keep tracking of the state of colonies over time, given that evidently it's not possible to put transponders on every individual. Concerning camera traps, we also offer services for on-site and off-site machine learning-based analytics. Regarding on-site analysis, we are giving final touches to a camera device capable of reliably filtering out on-the-fly spurious images containing no animals. You know that this is one of the main problems with standard camera traps. We can also process off-site large batches of images from camera traps to automatically identify species in them and generate the corresponding reports. We also work with acoustic streams, both on-site and off-site. In this sequence, I don't know if you can hear it, but we use Audio Mod, which is a very well-known commercial audio logger that you surely know about, reprogrammed by us to automatically identify on-site lesser kestrel calls. This is a species of interest in one of the projects we are participating in. The light turns green when one of such calls is identified, as you probably saw at the beginning. Okay, you can see how it is turning green when this call is identified, and otherwise with other species. Okay, you have another species here, and well, it turns red because nothing of interest in this case is identified. By merging on-site identification with further off-life processing, we can provide really meaningful information, such as bird population estimation, for instance. And evidently, vocalization of terrestrial animals would also be processed. We also provide smart devices that incorporate different types of sensors and actuators. For example, transponder readers, scales, or even automatic trap doors. We can adapt the boxes for different purposes, as you will see in a moment, and we also can include elements such as solar panels to increase their autonomy. Up in this slide over here, you can see boxes that are currently deployed and fully operative in a remote building near Seville, Spain. And actually, the mosaic of video streams previously shown is coming from these nest boxes. An example of how smart nest boxes can be adapted to other species. You can see a system that we prototyped some time ago in collaboration with Highland Wildlife Park in Scotland to automatically weigh and through chipping Scottish wildcats. Okay, just as a final example of our technologies, we have designed a modular multi-sensor IoT board that can be adapted to different application scenarios. Up to 5 different sensors from a very extensive catalog can be interfaced to this board, which also includes an interface with a chip reader and also a communication module that you can adapt to the available communication infrastructure at the particular location you are deploying. Either you have Wi-Fi, GSM, whatever, you can select the proper board to be enabling communication. Interestingly, around 10 units of this platform are currently in active deployment, fully operative in Doñana National Park, which is a natural reserve especially protected in Andalusia, south of Spain. Well, this is it. We recently launched the first version of our landing page. Here you have the link and also the contact email. Please let us know about your technological needs for wildlife observation, because BiodAIverse will provide you with solutions. Thank you very much.
Oh boy, you guys are doing a lot, like it's such a broad range of things. Carly, did you want to jump in and ask your question?
Yeah, I just wondered what kind of ML you're running, like what kind of models are you guys using?
Well, for instance, in the case of the smart camera trap, we are using a SqueezeNet, okay, but we have modified the structure of a SqueezeNet for, the final stages of this network are adapted to identify categories animal, no animal, okay? So we adapt the training according to the requirements. In concerning identification, we have used BirdNet as the starting point, but we have also modified this structure to, well, the requirements for each case.
Can I also ask, so it sounds like you're building hardware and doing consulting. Is that your business model?
Exactly, yes.
Okay,
I mean,
cool.
we have standard products that we can adapt, but we can also create new ones in case they are needed.
What's your dream? Who's your dream group to work with? What sort of stuff do you want to work on?
Well, I can give you an example. Right now, we have a pilot launch with CEO BirdLife, which is the oldest organization about protecting birds in Spain. Precisely what we have done is to deploy some audio mods to collect information, and now we are going to provide off-site automatic analysis of these audio flows in order to identify species. And in this particular context, our dream is to cover the whole territory of Spain with audio loggers to have a good view of the situation concerning bird species in the country.
Interesting. You don't have to answer this question, but I'm just curious, are you partnering and going for grants together, or is it like a consulting? What's your usual model?
In this case, it's consulting directly, okay? Well, the thing about grants, well, the point is that because we come from research institutions, we have research projects that are somehow feeding this knowledge that we are trying to transfer to the market, okay?
Okay, cool.
So in that regard, we are fortunate, we are lucky because we have this support, but evidently what we want is that the company is operating by itself in the future as fast as possible.
Yeah, we'd love to have you back in another year and see where you're at. So we'll keep in touch.
It'd be great.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jorge. Okay, Leila, do you wanna take over and share your research?
Yes, sure.
And if you've just joined, just drop into the chat, say hello, tell us where you're joining from. Love to meet you guys in the chat. But yes, Leila, take it away.
Thank you. And thank you so much for having me, Stephanie. And hello to everybody. It's lovely to be here. This is my first time, but I don't think it will be my last time because this is really interesting. So I am here to talk a little bit about a piece of research that we have launched just a couple of weeks ago on natural resource management. Just a quick sort of introduction into who we are in case you haven't been in contact with GSMA before. So we are the Association for Mobile Network Operators, and I work in Mobile for Development, which is sort of the international development arm of GSMA. We sit in the intersection between the mobile ecosystem and the development sector. And we work a lot with innovation, and we have a focus on low and middle income countries. So our main sort of anchor is our research, but we also work with local market engagement and advocating for the cause through, for example, partnership building and providing grant funding through our innovation funds, which I will also talk a little bit about a little bit later. So I sit in the Climate Tech program, which is funded by FCDO and ZEDA. And we obviously have a climate focus, looking at topics like the circular economy and plastics. And we just today launched a report on digital climate finance. But now I will talk about our work in natural resource management. So this particular piece of research was led by GSMA's Climate Tech program, but it was also in partnership with the REDAA program, which is funded by FCDO and managed by IIED. And we had a research partner here called Busara Center for Behavioral Economics, which helped us with all the desk research and interviews and so on. So I obviously won't be able to do any type of deep dive into our findings because we don't have enough time for that. But I will try to give a brief overview and some sort of key findings, and also show you where you can read the report. And we will also organize a webinar later on in May, in which we will dive a little bit deeper. And we will also have representatives from REDAA and the case studies as well. So the research in general shows that digital solutions can improve the efficiency of natural resource management in the Global South. And this can range from the use of mobiles and satellites through to frontier technologies like AI. But there is a lack of documentation and data on its impact. And that's sort of where we come in here. We have some previous research, which you can see here on the screen with the Digital Dividends Report from 2020, which showed that local engagement is really important to ensure the responsible and fair uptake of digital solutions in NRM. And this is what we wanted to explore a little bit further in this new piece of research, which specifically focus on the barriers and incentives for local engagement. So let's see. We started looking at the power dynamics, and we can see that digital technology can help address inequalities in NRM when they are applied well. But if solutions don't take the local context into account, it can result in excluding certain groups from the decision-making process. And if inequalities are not understood properly, the solutions may only help individuals who, for example, have access to smartphones or have a higher digital literacy. So with all of that in mind, we identified 4 main categories of barriers to uptake of NRM solutions. And when I say NRM, I mean natural resource management, obviously. So one of the barriers that we saw were structural barriers. And with that, we mean poor internet connectivity, limited smartphone access, or issues with costs related to the tech. For example, smartphone access can in some communities be concentrated among members who are younger or male, and smartphone-based solutions may in those cases exclude harder to reach groups and can reinforce existing inequalities. Technical barriers mean limitation in the technology or digital solution itself. If the user feels like the technology is too complicated or confusing, they are not likely to use it in the long run. We also saw social barriers, and here we look at things such as social norms and the internal ways of communicating within the communities, which need to be considered. And then we also have motivational barriers, which are a result of just human tendencies to behave in certain ways. And here we include barriers like limited attention spans, personal circumstances, or resistance to change. The end users need to properly feel like the solution is directly solving a problem in their daily lives in order to use them, basically. So after identifying these barriers, we dove deeper into 3 case studies to understand the barriers better and develop best practices. And so here are our sort of key ingredients for success. Some of them might seem a bit intuitive, but I still felt like they were important to highlight. So the first thing we saw was how important it is to co-create when you're designing these solutions. So by using this approach, we recognize local communities and indigenous people's deep understanding and knowledge of their environment and challenges. And an example of this that we saw came from Geo Indigenous Alliance, who use hackathons to co-design directly with indigenous communities. And a solution that came out of this type of hackathon was the Namunya Gap, which allows the Samburu community in northern Kenya to design and develop maps to document their land's natural resources. And the map uses symbols and words that are relevant to the community, and that way they bypass communication and language barriers. Secondly, we saw that it's very important to make it easy to use. The solutions need to be simple and intuitive. One example we saw in our research came from India Observatory and their CLART app, which is used to improve planning and management of soil and water resources in communities in India. The app translates complex data into simple color-coded maps, which are available in local languages. The third ingredient we saw was to provide direct rewards for using the solution. So especially financial incentives were found to be successful, which maybe is not very surprising. But an example here is the Fair Tree Pay to Grow system, which uses the Tree Tracker app, which incentivizes users in East Africa to grow and maintain trees. Fairtree provides direct payments at regular intervals after a new tree has been planted, and this both incentivizes the survival of the trees and provides a source of income for the user. And then the fourth ingredient was to create partnerships. So disseminating the technology through trusted individuals in the community is critical here. One example from Sumatra, Indonesia, is where the Rainforest Connection partnered with established NGO BiodAIverse to introduce their acoustic monitoring devices to help protect forests from illegal logging and poaching. So in the report, we also outlined recommended steps for the design process. I won't go into that now because we don't really have time for that. But like I mentioned before, we will have a webinar later on in May, which you are all welcome to join. And if you want to know more about that, you can either keep an eye on our webpage or contact me directly. We don't have a registration out for it quite yet, but we will eventually. And we will be then hosting this webinar together with REDAA and the 3 case studies as well. I also want to point out that this is an ongoing piece of research, and we are right now looking into the next steps. So we are looking into some design thinking activities, and I'd like to just encourage organizations that might be working with these topics and might be interested in participating and maybe test out some of our conclusions or work with us to further develop guidelines and so on, to just contact me directly, and let's stay in touch. So I mentioned at the start that we also work with grant funding. So it just happens to be that we have a fund open at the moment, which is called the GSMA Innovation Fund for Climate Resilient and Adaptation 2.0. And this is funded also by FCDO and CEDA. And we are looking for startups, SMEs, and social enterprises in Africa, South and Southeast Asia, the Caribbean, a few countries in Latin America and Eastern Europe, who work with digital solutions for climate resilience and adaptation. So that might be interesting for some of you who are joining us today. Just a little information on our priorities here, what we're looking for. We are specifically prioritizing projects that focus on targeting vulnerable populations and or ecosystems in coastal areas, small island states, or urban settings. We're also looking for solutions that tackle challenges posed by extreme weather events. We're looking for nature-based solutions, specifically looking at regenerative agriculture, sustainable forestry, or coastal and wetland ecosystem conservation and management. And we are also interested in sustainable consumption and production, specifically looking at reducing food loss and waste, improving sustainability and biodiversity of fisheries, and managing air pollution. And we would also like to encourage, especially female entrepreneurs, to apply. We have a lot more information on this. I obviously can't spend more time on that, but go into our web page, which is linked here. I'll pop it in the chat as well. And you'll find all of the T's and C's and frequently asked questions there. You can also, if you have specific questions, there's an email there where you can contact us. And for any questions on the research that I just presented or for any future engagement, just contact me directly.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Leila. I've already dropped links to everything you were talking about.
Okay, thank you.
When you get to the point of opening up registration for your webinar, you can just drop it into our events calendar on WildLabs so folks in our community can find it.
Great.
Awesome. Okay, I'm not going to give you any questions because we're, of course, as always, running late. So anyone, if you've got questions for Leila about the research or the fund, drop them in the chat and she can pick them up. Ellie and Talia, we're handing over to you now for intermission.
All right, here we go. And folks, it's time for a Wild Labs ad break. Toss it over to today's voice of Wild Labs, Talia Speaker, aptly named. Take it away, Talia.
Thank you. Kick back and relax while we tell you about one of our latest programs, the 2023 Women in Conservation Technology cohort in Tanzania. Applications are now open for this immersive 3-month training for early career women working in conservation in Tanzania. Through in-person workshops, a conservation internship placement, and many opportunities to connect, learn, and build a strong professional network and skills, this year's cohort will gain critical experience with the technology tools that are transforming the field to overcome conservation challenges regionally and beyond. If you are a Tanzanian woman building a career in conservation, apply to our Women in Conservation Technology cohort by midnight East African time on April 30th. And if you know women who would make great candidates for this program, please do share widely in your own conservation technology networks. To get started, visit the link in the chat. To learn more about our first Women in Conservation Technology cohort, visit Wild Labs to read about our inaugural program in Kenya, where 15 amazing participants came together for workshops, hands-on learning experiences, professional development courses, and making connections that will last a lifetime. Read more about 2022's cohort and see a video from our closing Kenyan workshop on Wild Labs by following another link in the chat. And over to you, Ellie.
Thank you so much, Talia. That was a wonderful ad read, but of course now it's time for our traditional game. Steph, I like that it makes you jump every time, even though
I love
you
it.
always know it's coming.
I know. But also I feel like we need to give you access to a range of different sound effects, which Carly has kindly volunteered to help you out with. Carly,
we will add some new sound effects, but I think people love the air horn. Folks, today we'll be doing one more round of Tech for Wildlife picks. If you've been here before, you'll know the game. We show you a pixelated version of something and you try to guess what's in the picture before I reveal it to you. But this month we have a little bit of a twist on it. Instead of looking at our Tech for Wildlife photo challenge photos, we'll be looking at screen caps from past variety hours. You can guess either the technology that is featured, or if you'd like some extra credit, which is just your own personal pride, you can try to guess the exact presenter or topic that they were covering. And if you'd like to cheat, all of these videos are available on our YouTube in the Variety Hour Shorts playlist that you can explore at any time. So let's get started. Folks, what are we looking at here? Steph, Talia, would you both like to be my assistant today and let me know what's happening in the chat?
Are we giving
Yes,
Talia
we
the
can do
power?
I think we should give Talia did a great ad read. Talia, I think you have the power now.
Okay,
Okay,
all
I have
right.
the power. Steph can participate for once.
Oh, okay.
All right, we have someone with a purple hat from Carly.
I could guess.
Any other brave guesses?
I'm
We've moved to
blank as well.
the second
Ellie,
one.
this
What
is
are we
very
doing?
difficult.
This is very difficult.
Some of these will be easier. We've started with a very hard one.
Dan has suggested a Labrador Retriever in space.
Is it a
I wish it was
planet?
that, but
Is it a
no.
planet?
What?
A planet? My mind has gone blank of all of the speakers who've come before today. Camera trap image? UV lights?
Close.
Giraffe from Rob? I don't think that's a giraffe. Oh,
Oh,
It
that was
is.
so hard.
One of the insect light traps
should've
from
known.
Tom August's presentation on I can't see the full name of it because all of you are blocking it on my
Developing
Zoom.
autonomous camera traps for insects. One of our great talks. He was last month. Yes, Rob. Giraffes and insect camera traps are definitely very close to each other.
There were other good talks in last month's as well. Okay.
There were. We have, of course, past presenter Carly here with us, advocating for her own presentation, which again, you can watch on our YouTube. It's on there. All right, folks, what is this? They are going to get easier. There will
Are
be one everyone will get within 1 second, and you'll be like, this was too easy.
Is it a map?
Rob says this one's definitely
Drunk rainbow. Giraffe? Firetail? Web page? Lauren says it's a web page. Correct. Earth
This
engine.
is
Okay.
It is a map, whoever said a map, and this is, of course, from one of our most popular Variety Hour segments, Big Earth Observation Data Analysis. As you can tell, I learned how to move the little thing on Zoom out of the way, so now I can see what the presentation names are. All right. How about this?
A lion. No idea. Ellie.
How would
Anything
anyone
else?
know that?
Ellie.
This one was too hard. I did, for the record, ask Steph yesterday, do you think this will be too hard? And you said,
Another
okay,
giraffe.
in my guidance, I did suggest perhaps concentrating on some animals.
there is an animal in this one. There
Okay,
is
what
an
do we
animal
reckon?
in this
Another
one.
giraffe? So David's guessing at a giraffe.
I will tell everyone right now, there are no giraffes in this one.
Is it someone holding something?
It is a creature, technically holding
African birds
something.
from last session?
A track
groundhog?
animal.
Oh, Adrian, you're sending your guesses to me directly. Close up of a chipmunk's face.
Bear.
No.
How is that? This is so hard.
This is a sea turtle, and this was, of course, from Alistair Davies' Club Arabata presentation. That was a tracker on a turtle. Folks, I think the next one is the really easy one. Yeah, okay. Everybody, congratulations. You're gonna get this one.
It's marine, is my guess.
It's
polar bear.
marine.
It's a shark. Is it Sammy?
It is.
Yes.
It's Trackers on Shark, and it was Sammy's Trials and Tribulations of Tracking Sharks and Rays. See, everybody, you had to suffer through a couple hard ones, but we got there. This
To
one,
be fair, no one in the
also-
chat got it right.
well, someone got it.
Okay,
this
it's
one-
good because I'm a mega nerd. I
thought
can
it was
also
one
guess
pretty
this one.
easy.
Whoops. This is sorry. Person with a readout device. No, close. Talia.
Oh, Carly definitely
count.
got it.
Charlie got it?
Well, no,
Yeah.
she doesn't. No, not technically.
The
Oh, look,
bird
she did.
drone.
Sorry, I saw a drone.
Yeah.
It was Laura.
It
Sorry.
is-
Yes, Carly. Yes.
Technically.
But does anyone remember the bird drone's name?
No, what was the bird's?
It
What
was
was-
really cute. It was like, I can't remember, Ruby or something.
Oh, for everyone, Laura was building a kit for her hawk to fly through bats, which was really cool.
It's very neat. There's a lot of video footage in her presentation. That is, of course, Laura's The Hawk Ear, using falconry and custom electronics for capturing behavior of bats in flight. A very fun one, part of our Tech for Wildlife Photo Challenge special. And I think this might be fun.
Ellie, the reason I know that is because that's the banner image for the global feed of Wild Labs, and that's a bookmark on my browser.
Oh, hey, look at us.
For anyone who is hanging out in the global feed, yeah, disappointed that you all didn't recognize that one. It should be ingrained in your brain by now. And I believe this is the last one. Folks, what type of technology are we looking at here?
There's someone on a hill.
Someone is on a hill. That is true. We've got that much.
So
is it Ollie?
Acoustics? Ollie's not talked. Yeah. Drones? Ollie's not given a talk at Variety Hour, has he?
Maybe not.
And here we go. We've got some people trying to track.
That was also a great talk. Yeah.
And folks, that was it for our game this month. If you would like to check out those and other Variety Hour presentations, again, that is over on our YouTube, and all of today's presentations will be added there as well. And we'll be back next month with another game, which it'll be easier. Next time it's going to feature audio and video clips.
I feel like we promised that last time and we did not deliver, so let's not promise
that. I didn't have COVID again when I was making this, so everybody got the B mode of this month's game. And now, back to the show.
Okay, Ellie, you get like A+ marks for enthusiasm while having COVID and writing a quiz while having COVID. So forgiven for developing the hardest quiz possible. Okay, we're going to get back. We're running late as always. Ruth, do you want to take it over and talk to us about what research you're doing?
Yeah, thanks so much. That's going to be a hard act to follow.
That was very generous. Sorry. Wait, that's really harsh. Sorry, Ellie.
Steph, excuse me. I agree. It is a hard act to follow, but I have faith in you, Ruth.
Thank you. Well, I'm a huge Wild Labs fan, so really delighted to be invited to be here today. So I am a very recently new assistant professor at UC Santa Barbara in California. And I thought I'd just chat about a couple of projects that I'm working on that leverage conservation technology in what I am hoping are some exciting ways. So my primary research interest is really trying to understand the many, many ways that humans impact wildlife. And I personally think that, this huge constellation of biodiversity sensing technologies that we have are really critical to understanding this. So in my research, I try and leverage just about all of these at various points. I got my start in working with bioacoustics, which is still very close to my heart. So it's really fun to see that supported at Wild Labs. But yeah, I just think, I'm really interested in thinking about how these different types of data can come together to help us understand these connections. So the first project I wanted to chat about was really motivated by recent devastating events that our planet went through. I don't know if you all recall in the very early days of the pandemic, seeing all sorts of photos like this popping up in popular news media, where, we saw a lot of reports of, as we were all staying home, that wildlife were literally taking back to the streets. And so I think for, many of us, this seemed like a potential silver lining in some very dark times, but also brought up a lot of really interesting questions about, what our relationship with wildlife is, and if this sort of massive change in human activity could be a way to understand that in a more nuanced way. So I launched a initiative along with many, many other folks that's housed under the umbrella of the International Biologging Society to try and understand, we sort of pitched this as a way to, understand how wildlife interact with humans, and particularly focusing on using GPS data and animal movement trajectories as a fundamental sort of like data type that we were all oriented around. And so if you're interested in being involved, I can share more information on that, but we have Lots of folks donated movement data for us. And then now we have many sub-projects underneath this where folks are sort of picking off the specific pieces that they find interesting. And it's been a really wonderful collaborative community to be involved in. So I wanted to highlight the project that I've been leading along with many other folks, just specifically focused in the US. So we really wanted to link movement trajectories of animals to high resolution data on human mobility and trying to understand the sort of relative impacts of landscape modification versus the impact of our actual direct presence has on humans, which in general gets sort of, lost from the picture. I think we usually conflate these two. And I think they're, like we saw in the pandemic, there's some interesting places where animals without us are able to utilize habitats and vice versa. So we're leveraging movement data across the US for birds and mammals to try and disentangle these. And so I'll just show a few results. So we're specifically looking at the impacts on space use, so the amount of area that animals use on a weekly basis, and then also how that translates into the environmental niches that they use, so the environmental conditions that they're accessing. And so for a single species, we're able to look at the relative impacts of modification and mobility. So in the case of the cougar, we can see that there's actually two things going on, right? That it's not just that they use less space in more highly modified environments, it's that they also use less space when we're around, which is pretty interesting. But then we also see this interactive effect where the impact of modification or of our presence is actually stronger in less modified environments. So that's, maybe pointing to cases where, us showing up in public parks or big national parks has a bigger effect than it would in a city where, potentially individuals are more habituated to our presence. And then we can also show how that translates into the types of resources they're using. So then we repeated this across a lot of about 40 different species of birds and mammals across the US. And this is work that we're hoping to submit fairly soon with a number of other co-authors. But what's really striking to us is just the really heterogeneous responses that we see across species. And I won't, in 10 minutes can't dig into all the nuances here, but what we're really interested in is then bringing these into typologies of responses that we see for species and really thinking about, why some species might show some responses versus others. So we see some that simply change the amount of space they use. We see some where we think they may actually switch the locations that they use. Where others where we actually see that they have to switch locations and then change the resources that they use in order to sort of accommodate our presence. And so this work to me has been really exciting to think about how we can actually bring in new technologies that understand actually human impacts and how important that is and somewhat unrecognized in the conservation tech space. So then zooming back out, so that's just one piece, I think, where movement data can bring a lot of rich information. But I'm really interested in general in thinking about biodiversity data as a whole and what the gaps are and how technology can play a role in filling our knowledge gaps. So I've been doing a lot of work looking at this at the global scale. So I led this study, thinking about, we often see, the Global Biodiversity Information Facility, GBIF, is this huge data aggregator that's been really powerful in promoting data sharing and access across the world. So on the left, we're looking at the annual number of species records collected for terrestrial vertebrates, and it's just truly staggering that we're seeing, hundreds of millions of records being collected per year on bird species globally. But then I was really interested in thinking about, okay, but how does that translate into information about these species? And so all the way over on the right is a metric I developed that is, at the simplest, really quantifying for a species and its range, what proportion of the range had records per year. And so when we look at that metric averaged across species, it's actually much lower. So even for the most highly documented groups like birds, we're seeing less than 20% of species ranges sampled per year. And so to me, that speaks to this huge gap in our ability to really understand what's going on as we think about things like climate change and potential range shifts. But we also see this scaling up so if we look at this nationally, it's not probably surprising to any of us, but we really do see, even with the tremendous amount of data being collected, these huge geographic biases in our knowledge of biodiversity, and obviously has just huge, tremendous impacts as we try and move forward with a lot of the sort of international targets on biodiversity conservation. And one thing I'm particularly excited about is, we see these big frameworks come out of like the Convention on Biological Diversity, which are holding countries accountable to collecting data, and the role that technology, we need to automate some of this process in order to fill these gaps. And so I've been collaborating with the Wildlife Insights Initiative, which I'm sure many of you may have heard of before, but very briefly is a large collaboration across a number of NGOs as well as Google to try and create a platform for camera traps to begin with, where folks can upload their camera trapping data and receive species level ID supported by Google AI. And then the sort of incentive structure is that hopefully this promotes data sharing and allows people to more rapidly process their camera trapping imagery into some of the key analytics they might want. So I've been working with another researcher, Fabiola Iannarelli at Yale, to look at, so repeating this exercise that I did with GBIF data, but then adding in the, Wildlife Insights is still in its early days, but we have a large amount of camera trapping data held there, and looking at, okay, are camera traps being deployed in ways that are helping fill some of these data gaps that we see for GBIF data? And what's really exciting to me is that we see that it is potentially. So the map on the left is looking at the boost in data coverage that we get at the national level. And then I'm highlighting on the bottom there the 10 countries with the largest boosts in their data coverage when you add in camera trapping data on top of these other point occurrences coming from GBIF. And what's really exciting to see is that these are places that are typically very under-recognized and have huge data limitations. And then we can also see on the right, I'm highlighting at the species level, where a lot of the species that we see that are getting big boosts are sometimes elusive or smaller bodied organisms that aren't typically recognized. So I think, a lot of times camera traps get deployed to survey charismatic species, but they also collect data on everybody that comes by the camera. And I think that speaks to a huge power of technology to help us fill in some of these data gaps. So hopefully that paper will be coming out soon. Yeah, so I guess just to summarize, it was sort of span a lot of different spaces as a researcher. And the thing that I'm really excited about, as the ability to deploy these technologies has gotten so much easier, and we're seeing the huge advance of AI and translating that into observations that we can use. I think now we're really at a point where I feel like we need work on, okay, how do we translate that back into ecological insight, and how do we start bringing some of these data types together? So through my work, I think a lot of the things that I'm seeing come up are, the real need for data sharing and coordination across different data types, but then also like a huge amount of my work is just trying to develop scalable workflows that can help us go from, especially in animal movement, we're getting into millions or billions of observations, and we just don't really have the tools necessarily to process that. But yeah, and also just, a lot of these projects, I think, involve a lot of collaboration across, realms of ecology, meaning terrestrial or marine, but also people. And yeah, anyway, thank you so much for having me. Those are just some of the exciting work that I am trying to think about how to bring this constellation back together and ways that we can do that in a way that informs as many questions as possible. So thanks so much.
That was awesome, Ruth. You're touching on so many and providing links between so many amazing projects. Ruth, Rob, do you want to jump in and ask your question of Ruth quickly?
Hi, Ruth. Yeah, just a very quick question about your camera trap data. Yeah. When you were talking about your percentages, because they all looked really low, and I was intrigued to see that Australia which is where I'm based, was really low. Is it just people who share their data with you, or is it anyone you could find that was doing camera trapping, say in published studies or whatever?
Yeah, so I'm working just with the Wildlife Insights data, and Wildlife Insights has, we're trying to balance, and I think this is such a big question for many different communities. How do you balance data sharing with concerns over data privacy and also data sovereignty, and how to make sure to support acknowledgement of the folks that spent a ton of effort. So Wildlife Insights data sharing model currently is that folks are allowed to embargo data for a number of years. Obviously, you can also blur and remove species of sensitive nature. So this is all data that was publicly available through Wildlife Insights. And so there's actually a ton more that isn't publicly available yet because it's under embargo. So yeah, and because the platform is quite new, we're still at very early data volume. In terms of volume, that it's quite low. And I think there's one pitch that we're hoping comes out of this paper is trying to encourage people to share, to see that sharing your data could have a global impact beyond your local study, and if there's ways that we can empower people to do that in a way that still respects their needs, is something we're really excited about.
Awesome.
Thanks.
If you guys have got more questions for Ruth, do you want to jump into the chat and ask them of her? And I'm going to throw over to Henrik now. We're coming up on the hour. We're pretty chill about it going over a few minutes. Henrik, are you okay?
Yep. Yeah, I can run over.
Okay, cool.
I can also run through our updates pretty quickly, so anyone who needs to jump off the hour.
You're not gonna people generally stick out, so yeah.
Anyone needs to jump off though on the hour, I'll run through our updates pretty quickly and then have the rest of the time as more of a conversation.
Okay, cool. Perfect.
Let me pull this up. TLDR, the Sentinel team at Conservation X Labs has kind of been knuckling down, putting their heads to the table for the last 2 years or so, trying to make these cameras, smart cameras and smart AI plug-in adapters to commercial cameras work. And we are now hitting a tipping point where we are starting to see things work. I'm going to get into the real meat, so to speak, of the applications that we've been involved in and what we're excited about. So I'll go over the overview of what this technology is, what we were trying to do, but this is just one of those photos of one of the field tests that we did last year in Costa Rica. So just to run through, this probably isn't the right order to do things, but we're involved in a lot of outdoor security, looking at anti-poaching behavior, helping out with professional ecological surveying, and another piece is looking at very precise animal monitoring. So looking at zoonotic diseases for wildlife, looking at lameness in cattle, recreation, pet health, that sort of thing is almost like a long-term view of what we can see this technology being applied to, but we're really focused on the wildlife organizations and the impact areas first. So diving in, the technology itself, we have an AI plugin that you can see in the middle. This plugs straight in through the SD card slot to commercial cameras. It's pretty universal based on which cameras you like to work with most. And then since we've had a few conversations with folks on this call, Carly, I know we've had a lot of chats about working on a bioacoustics, which is on our radar, but we're focusing on nailing down the images and videos first. And then the stuff that you see on the left is our all-in-one, like out of the box smart camera that has basically, they work the same and they're able to run these AI models locally, take photos, take videos, and then process the models over them as they're captured and send back that information. So we do that by taking the photos, taking the videos, and when we see something that is of interest, of use to you, we'll send that information back over Wi-Fi, cellular, or satellite networks, and we're also exploring with LoRa. That latter one, satellite, has really opened the doorway for us to work in some of the most remote locations, which has really kind of pushed us forward in a lot of rainforest locations. We're looking to work with national parks that have had trouble with cell network coverage. So this is really like where the majority of our first deployments are coming into play, is being able to work with satellite, and we're partnered with Swarm to make that happen. And so sending that data back to you, we've built out a suite of software tools. We've launched recently an online dashboard that lets you see the visuals of the data, see the insights that are coming in. It's also a place to manage all your devices and models from a click of a button. So from this one space, you'll be able to put new models and remove old ones, and those should update over the year without having to have something or the device sitting on your desk with you. And then we can just kind of update when you want to wake those devices up, which models you want to be using, and have access to new models and train custom ones as well, all in one space. So that's really where the software end of things comes into play. We're also developing right now an offline desktop app. So if you don't want to get your hands on a device, if you don't really want to be deploying right then and you don't trust the AI models, you can take the SD cards that you've been using to collect data already on your trail cameras or whatever surveys you've been running and process the exact same models that run on these edge AI devices. Go back a couple slides. These are the same ones that will run on your laptops. So you can kind of test it out for yourself to run on legacy data, so to speak. Okay, so on to the fun stuff. We see models as almost answers to particular questions. So we've got folks who are coming in saying, I want to look at, I just got an email this morning looking at wild boars for African swine fever. We've been looking at behavior of gorillas in the Congo. We've been doing a ton of these different essentially, whenever someone has an end goal, has that question in mind, this is the kind of thing that we want to work towards, provide that model as a solution, as an answer to their custom deployment. So the kinds of work we've been doing, and this is almost in chronological order based on how early our prototyping has been. We started one of our first field tests in Virginia in the USA with the Nature Conservancy to spot oyster catchers and other seabirds. This was one of our first prototypes, but showed that our models had legs. It showed us that the prototype as well had a very good tendency to keep water in the devices, but not keep it out. So when the sea levels rose and flooded the devices, we ate up half the ocean just when we opened up the devices as well. So that was good to learn from and go back to the drawing board on the hardware front. But basically taking it from there, we've also been building up the devices. Just now we've launched a deployment with Island Conservation and a few other partners in Hawaii, and actually got our first insight just yesterday morning from there. So that was a big win for the team, looking at invasive species that are popping up on that space. As I mentioned, we've done a little bit of work with OSA Conservation based in Costa Rica. We're actually going to be going back out there in June to fulfill what we started, but we were out there May last year with the kind of most recent up-to-date prototype version of the hardware to put these out into the rainforest, really test out the cell coverage. Spoiler alert, the cell coverage was terrible, and we had to resort to soldering satellite units into our hardware in the middle of the rainforest, so making sure that we weren't causing any fires either. But those are now up and ready to go with like a version 1 stable hardware. So that's why we're excited to get out there with a lot more of the devices that we originally promised to that team. So the work we're doing out there is spotting endangered jaguars, giving the team a better idea of where they are, where they're moving in their population counts, but also checking out things like white-lipped peccaries, which are their main source of prey, and tapirs, which is just another species that they're very interested in. We're also we're using the mega detector model to be able to spot any signs of poaching activity. So they're kind of interested to see almost a rapid response solution to this, where we can see signs of folks who might not be the rangers in the area and give the OSA conservation team time to actually act on that kind of behavior. I have a couple of things. We've also been working on video. So you saw little snippets right in the beginning with gorilla behavior in the Congo. So this is in partnership that our AI researcher, our lead AI researcher, Dante, I think is on the call, has been heading up. And one of the other interesting ones is spotting neurological diseases in Florida panthers. So this is in partnership with the Florida Wildlife Commission. And we're starting to see this disease spread into other big cats like bobcats across the US. So we're trying to generalize this model and start to understand how these zoonotic diseases are spreading, not just in domestic animals, but in wildlife, and be able to run these ecological surveys very precisely. That is all the stuff I want to share, but there's one more piece that Dante has been heading up very recently before we just chat. Let me make sure I've got the video up. I'm not going to give it away because I want to say it, but I don't want to give it away. We've recently gone into individual re-identification. So the same partnership with the folks in the Congo, we have started to generalize this model, but start with gorillas, where we are identifying not just through facial recognition, but through full body recognition, individuals, and we're hoping to expand this into anomaly detection. So if a new gorilla comes in that we don't know, we'll say we don't know and provide a name to them so that they can be re-identified in the future. But this model right now is being generalized as we speak so that we can do things like individual identification of elephants in forests, and then just work with basically the use cases of this could be potentially endless. So yeah, TLDR, we take on a huge variety of projects. If there is a question that you are interested in, if it's related to ecological surveying, animal monitoring, animal health, and outdoor security, then that's the kind of thing that's right up our alley and is what we want to keep working on. So happy to provide that update, and we're excited to be doing more of these kind of deployments very, very soon.
That was a great presentation. Thanks, Henrik. Carly, do you want to ask your question?
Well, I have so many questions.
Oh,
yeah.
Have the floor.
No, that's a dangerous statement you're making.
Okay,
there.
one question.
Are you, with the individual identification stuff, have you reached out to like the WildBee or Wildbook folks at all, working with them?
We've been working pretty closely with them. We started working on this stuff just a couple of months ago. So based on just urgent need from the partnerships who are wanting to explore that area. So we've been learning from the WildBee team a lot when it comes to this space of individual re-ID. So yeah, we are, have in a lot of conversations with them. They've been close partners for a while. But yeah, we're excited to see where that goes.
Lars, did you want to ask your question? No? Shall I ask it? Well, Henrik, what's your business model?
It's a good question. We sell the devices up front. We have satellite and cellular units, and so they come at their retail price tag. We have a subscription model month to month or annually based on whether you work with cell or satellite units, just because we want to keep that communications pipeline alive for you. And then finally, if there is a custom model that you want trained that involves what is the retail pricing? I can give a full lowdown. There's a custom AI piece as well, if there's something that you want done, trained to your needs. We are also trying to work on building out a model marketplace. So we're trying to lower the barrier for folks who want to get involved with having a custom AI model or just being able to use one that's off the shelf. So that's behind the scenes right now, but there's like an MVP, I would say, a minimum viable product version of the model marketplace that's a part of that user dashboard. So we will be putting up generalized models, things that we train on our own whim, we'll be putting on that model marketplace. So anyone who does sign up to that dashboard is able to download one of those and then see what it's like to run when the desktop application is ready to go. So there's going to be a ton of different opportunities to try out the tech without putting down a credit card or anything like that. We want to make sure that people trust what we're doing and we know that it's new technology. So we want to build that trust from the get-go.
Carly, do you want to ask your next question? I will wrap in a second. A couple more questions.
Oh yeah, you said retail price tag, and I was like,
yeah,
what?
Sorry. So cell devices right now are $350 a piece, and then satellite are $400. The monthly subscription for cell is $20 per device per month, and satellite is $35. Those are high price tags right now based on, it's a small team and we're manufacturing in small batch. So we're anticipating that to drop as we grow and as we scale up. But that's what we're working with right now. We're breaking even on the devices, and really it's the models and the subscriptions that are keeping us afloat to verify that business model right now.
How do you buy? Is it just by getting it? Do you have a storefront?
Right now, not yet. So you just email us and we'll have that conversation. So it's a very case by case at this point.
Yeah.
But by the end of the year, I'm really hoping to have almost more of an automated pipeline for folks who want to get stuff, and we can more easily just ship it to them. Have really robust documentation, video tutorials on setting up. That's all going to be made by the end of the year.
Cool. The other thing, what's the update on the Edge Impulse, the full packaged camera trap?
Yeah, so we're working with the manufacturing partners out in Slovenia, a company called Ernest. So it looks very different to what you saw in the photo. The footprint is a lot smaller. Oh, I can't give away those details just yet. I actually got an update for the official CAD rendering last Thursday from them. It's a very small device. It's about this size. And we're actually looking to work with them, continue to work with them on the AI adapter piece, just to make it look exactly the same. So we have the plugin and the full camera versions.
Cool. Okay. At this point, I'm going to wrap. I have a couple more questions that we'll ask afterwards.
Sure.
But for now, thank you all of our speakers and for everyone who joined us today. And we'll see you next month. Bye, everyone on YouTube, and everyone else, you can stay if you want. All right, bye, everyone.